Hi guys, welcome back to another BigLipz podcast. Obviously it's myself, Catherine Maurice, joined by the lovely Sam Macaulay Blair. Um,
Hello.
so this is podcast number 8, and I thought we would be slightly topical, and because obviously now we're allowed again in some places anyway to go back to the cinema. I wanted to talk about the kind of experience of going to the cinema. Because I think it's such a personal thing. People love going to the cinema, and then I thought it'd be interesting to talk about why we like to go to the cinema, what our favourite parts is, different things like that. I think as well, this is one that kind of came up for me because I remember being in a lecture when I was at Stirling, and we did a whole kind of module on basically how weird the cinema experience was.
Oh,
Because,
really?
yeah, because when you think about it, you're sitting in a giant room with strangers in the dark watching a movie that you've never seen before,
It
which is weird
is a
when
bit
you
odd.
think about it. And then
Yeah.
it's sort of like I think sometimes it being like a shared experience definitely adds to the whole experience of going to the cinema. Like if you see a horror and there's like people screaming and things like that, it just makes it a lot more like immersive almost. It's kind of like
Yeah.
going to a show, but obviously what you're seeing is pre-recorded. So I think that's always really interesting. And I think it's so funny because when you think about it that way, when you go to the cinema the next time, you'll be sitting there and you'll be like, this is really weird. Especially now because you're spaced out, so you're even more like segregated. There's no like, there's no feeling of togetherness anymore. You're just
Yeah,
like
that's
me and
very
my
true.
me and my pal are sitting here, and you and your pal are sitting 4 rows down, and we're all enjoying this movie, trying not to breathe
Uh,
too loudly or anything.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, basically, I was gonna just start by asking you, Sam, what is your favorite thing about going to the cinema? Do you have a favorite thing? Is it just like the whole experience, or is there something specific that you like, almost like a ritual that you follow when you go to the cinema?
Yeah, I always make a blood sacrifice before going in.
Same.
Um,
How weird.
glad it's not just me. I do get some weird looks sometimes. No, it feels like a bit of a cop out, but honestly I think like the excitement of it would is like a vague answer, but really just like there is like a certain amount of hype when you go see, especially if it's a film that you've been looking forward to for a while. But when you actually go to see it in the cinema, and I think sometimes you get the nice sort of like double whammy of that effect where like you're walking towards the cinema, you're sort of walking in and you're absolutely buzzing to see a film, and then you obviously sit down and you watch like all the trailers, and you kind of it happens a lot to me where like I forget, like just because I'm so like captivated by like or annoyed or whatever by like a bunch of trailers. I then like momentarily forget what it is that I've come to see, and then like
Yep.
when that name sort of pops up, I get that nice feeling of like, oh yes,
That's
that's
such
why
a
I'm
good
here.
point, yeah, because sometimes there's a good like 40-minute chunk before the movie even begins, and then like, yeah, you're right, like halfway through you're like, what, why am I here again?
Yeah, exactly. Like they do keep you waiting a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think it's just like there's nothing quite like it than like actually sitting there and a movie again, like especially a movie that you've waited a long time to kind of see. You've kind of been like eagerly following the release of, and just that experience of like there's like a genuine excitement to the movie beginning that I don't think you get otherwise. Like, it's still like great if you put on a movie on like Netflix or on like even if you buy like a DVD or a Blu-ray and you stick it in and you're watching it, and there'll be excitement, but I just don't think it ever matches. I don't think I've ever felt like that excited sitting to watch something in my house or in someone else's
Yeah.
house. As opposed to like when I'm actually going to the cinema, because it's an experience at the end of the day. And there's something really nice about that, and I think as well knowing that like you're committed to this thing for the next few hours, and if you go with friends, then potentially you're then going to go and discuss it afterwards, which is probably like one of the other like best things about it as well, is just like making a sort of event of it, and then
Uh-huh.
like having the time and sort of the opportunity to sort of go and discuss what you've seen afterwards. And it's quite a funny thing to do, because you're kind of like talking about how you reacted to something that you've all just like sat and watched.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think really just like the hype would be like the biggest thing for me that I'd like love about cinema. But a bunch of the stuff that you mentioned as well, like it's all really part of the experience, like you were saying about like horrors and the sort of I think it sort of transfers across all the emotions, really. I think, like, you're more likely to in some cases, maybe not, it depends if you're like how aware you are of like the people around you, but I do think maybe you're more likely to cry in the cinema. You're more likely, definitely, I feel like you're more likely to laugh, and you're more likely to get scared because you have like the sort of the emotional height of like everyone else in the room, and that sort of almost like your body like can't help but sort of join in that like experience and that emotion. So yeah, very, very long-winded answer.
No, I definitely agree. I think one of my favourite things as well, like you talked about, is like the immediate, like, almost the minute the credits come up, you turn to whoever you're with and you're like, what did you think?
Yeah.
And then it just kind of
absolutely.
spirals from there, which is always fun. Because obviously we've made a whole podcast of talking about movies, as have millions of other people, so clearly that's what we enjoy. So that's always fun. I always like as well, because when you think, like, movies are definitely like a form of escapism, most of the time. There's obviously ones that aren't, but especially when you're at the cinema, there's the whole kind of like etiquette of you turn your phone off, so for that period of time you're just unreachable, which is like nowadays that's kind of like a weird thing, because you normally, like, if you think about it, even if you're at work when you're maybe not meant to have your phone, sometimes you're like, do you know what I mean, have a wee look and just reply to whatever. But when you're in the cinema, you don't.
Absolutely.
And there's not even like an inkling to check,
Yeah.
which is always nice.
Absolutely.
I think as well.
That's a very.
Sorry, carry on.
Sorry, I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say it's a very good point. Like, it's, I've sat and watched a movie with my flatmates last night, and there were points where their phones were going off, and they're sort of like looking down, checking the screens, and it's nice when you're in the cinema, and it's just like people. It's not technically that people can't do that, but people just don't because of, like you say, the etiquette, and that is really like valuable these days.
I think as well, like, if you're in your house, I don't know if you do this, but I always find myself, like, even if I'm enjoying whatever it is I'm watching, sorry.
That's okay.
Even if I'm enjoying what I'm watching, I'll just, like, kind of naturally, like, pick up my phone after a time, and I'll be like, oh, I'll just scroll through this when there's nothing worth, like, seeing or watching on it.
Absolutely same. Like, it's so easily done, and it doesn't, like, like you say, like, I can be like utterly engrossed in something, and then still, and it's not even like until I've got the device in my hand and I've been on it for a few seconds, and I'm like, why have I just done this?
Yeah, like, and then you're missing parts of the movie that you actually want to watch. It's weird.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think as well, one of, like, I just love the kind of, like, it's almost like a routine, and like nostalgia of going to the cinema, and you go and you get your giant big juice that you can barely hold, and your big giant box of popcorn, and they always upsell you the popcorn so that you've got a large one that's like this big.
Well, speaking of, that's I've got a very themed drinking vessel this week.
Oh my god, yes, I love it. I was sad. I wanted to have like a little popcorn thing. I remember for my 21st, there was like a whole kind of cinema theme, and my mum had bought like popcorn things like that and stuff like that. But
that's brilliant.
So annoying. I've just got this box standard glass, unfortunately.
Well, to be fair, that is quite jaggy to drink from, but I'm committed
to the cause.
it now.
I love it.
Exactly.
I think that's funny. So in terms of, like, do you think there's anything that cinemas could do better? Like, people always go on about, like, smell-o-vision and things, which I don't think is necessary in the slightest. But do you have any suggestions, or what would your thoughts be?
That's a good question, actually. It's a really good question. I guess it's kind of hard to say, like, and it could vary as well. I don't think I'm that up for smelly cinema, to be honest. I've
never, maybe like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is the only one that I've ever been like, oh, I wish I could smell what that smells like.
Yeah. That's a very good point, but then I also feel like that'd be more aggravating because
you're
then just like, no, I just want to eat it.
Exactly.
I guess that's the point. But no, I think it's interesting because they do obviously try and do new things like at various points. Obviously, there was a whole 3D fad that went on for a very long time. Thanks, James Cameron. And I think, like, it can, like, don't get me wrong, like, it can add to the experience. Like, it's nice. There are certain films that I have watched and I've gone, actually, it would have been really cool to see that in 3D, or if, like, they'd done 3D properly for it. And the same with, like, you know, that thing, the D-Box or whatever it's called, the one where you, like, sit in a chair and the chair is, like, mechanical and, like, tosses you about. If you get the right film for that, that's also like it absolutely does add to the experience. I think I remember going to see Gravity, and that had like the D-box feature, and I was like, okay, this is definitely like adding, because it's a movie about a character just getting like smashed about space, like a million different things colliding into her. So it definitely added to like the impact of the film and the immersion of it. But yeah, generally I kind of think no. I think like the experience itself is like, yeah, it really is just like is all you really need. Like sometimes IMAX can be nice to get a bigger screen, and I guess you could argue that maybe like sometimes it'd be worth, with some films. I've seen like one or two films that have done like intermissions. If it's like a very long film, and I don't think that's necessarily the worst idea sometimes, because like at the end of the day, that it's one of the good things and one of the bad things about cinemas, I think, is that you obviously can't really go to the bathroom without missing any of the film. And that's quite nice in the sense that, like, again, it like, you know, it's a good movie if you're not getting up to go to the bathroom, and it's quite like revelatory if you're just getting up to go pee and you don't even like you're not even like quickly walking or anything.
Yeah, exactly. Or you like whisper to whoever you're with, you're like, tell me what happened.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, otherwise, like, I can't actually think of anything off the top of my head where I think like, okay, this is what cinemas need to add. I mean, even like for ages, like cinemas, the cinemas that I was going to, like, didn't really sell any booze, and then I started going to cinemas that like, or cinemas that I went to just started selling booze, and even then, like, that was one of those things that I think I'd thought for a while, it would be really cool if you could get like a drink in the cinema, and then I've never like taken advantage of it, because actually I don't really want to drink when I'm watching like a film. I'm quite happy to just like get immersed in the experience, and, and I don't really want to taint it in any way. What about yourself?
I think the only kind of gripe that I have about cinemas, and I don't know if you've got this as well, but I've spoken to a couple of people and they agree, where I remember being young and the cinema being a lot darker. Like, it seems now that even when the lights are off, if you're sitting underneath one of those lights, do you know what I mean? You could sit and read a book by it. They're so bright, and it's really like, it does it definitely takes you out of it a little bit, because all you can focus on is, oh look, there's a bright light over there and there and there and there. So that would be my only kind of gripe. But like you were saying, I think the smell and things, and even like the seat things that you were talking about, they tend to, it would maybe feel more like a ride.
Yeah.
And I feel like 2 hours of that would be a bit grating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like if you've got a set PC film, like again like Gravity, then it can work a treat. But yeah, generally I think it's a bit daft. Like I've seen like 2 or 3 films with that, and I think one of them a lot, like, you know, there's like lots of dialogue scenes and stuff, and that it's almost like either it's not doing anything, or what's even worse is they're trying to figure out excuses to use it.
Yeah,
and that's way worse, because you're just like, it just feels really fake. But yeah, I think that's a really good point about the lights, actually. Like, I don't have any like memory of it being like pitch dark in the cinemas, but at the same time, like, I have absolutely been like, I've gone to see things and been distracted by like blinking lights next to the screen and stuff like that. And it is supposed to be, yeah, ultimately it should be like as dark as possible, because like you want all your attention on the screen before you, instead of like at like a light or something that's like blinking in the distance.
Exactly. No, that's just a little bugbear of mine that always annoys me.
Understandable.
But moving on from that, what is your what's the best movie you've seen in the cinema, or what was your favourite kind of cinematic experience? I've got a few options for this. So.
Yeah, I have quite a list, really, like thinking about it, because there's so many films where like I've gone to the cinema and like just had like such a great experience, and I think like it's definitely like heightened. I mean, going back to like childhood, I remember first, like a very obvious one, but the first time I saw like a Star Wars film in the cinemas was obviously like it blew my mind. And then like more recently you have stuff like Avengers, which actually I remember going to see the first Avengers movie, and because that was obviously like, that was when it really, like, those Marvel movies like really took off, because that was the first time like they properly attempted something like that with the superheroes. And
I'm sure I went to see the first Avengers movie, actually.
Yeah, I remember. I think I might have. actually gone on opening day, I think, or like very close to it. But I just remember like there was such a good energy in like the sort of crowds, and I remember like all of like so many of the jokes were like really really hitting their mark, and people just like absolutely losing it over it, and that was like yeah, I just like the way to watch the movie basically, and I still kind of get echoes of that when I rewatch it now, which is again like it's that's the sort of value of the experience, is like it's not just like the single isolated experience, it does kind of like stick with you. But yeah, I think another one to go in a very different direction with it. One of my favorite experiences also, I went to see the first Insidious movie.
Oh yeah.
Back when that came out, yeah, and that was. I don't think I knew very much about the movie going in. I just kind of knew that it was a horror, and I remember being like utterly petrified, and you could sense like it was really weird. Like I remember like there was like, it wasn't a super big theater, but there was like a decent amount of people in it, and people were kind of chatting and stuff throughout the trailers. So there wasn't really, it was like quite a lively sort of like atmosphere. There wasn't like any sort of like sense of like impending doom or impending dread. But I do remember when it went dark and the movie started, you almost felt like this just like tension sort of start to rise.
Yeah.
And I remember like there are points of that movie where I was like, this is like unbearably scary, and it's because like you can feel that like that sort of collective emotion from everyone. And I remember speaking to people like not long after it had come out, and they were like, yeah, I didn't really think that much of the film. And I was just like, you had a very different experience seeing it from me then.
Yeah, that's funny because I saw it. I've seen it, but I just saw it like in my house kind of thing, and there were definitely bits that were like jumpy, and I can imagine in the cinema, like especially like you're talking about when everyone in the room's got the like they're so tense. That would be good because there are some pretty good jump scares in there.
What about yourself then? What are the major ones for
I
you?
think one of like I always love to see like re-releases in the cinema, so I seem to go out of my way to watch movies to see movies that I've already seen. And I was talking about this the other day, and I was like, God, I do that a lot. Like I've seen loads of movies again in the cinema, but one of my favourite experiences was when we went to see Silence of the Lambs. It was it was at the cinema at the uni. And Silence of the Lambs is like one of my absolute like top 5 movies. And I think it's definitely like one of those movies that's like made for the big screen. There's so many like really really tight close-ups and stuff. Obviously Hannibal Lecter's super super scary. There's really iconic shots, obviously him with the mask on, and like the shot of him and Jodie Foster talking. It just makes it so much better when it's in when it's like on the big screen. And we went to see it at it was like the dead of the night. I'm sure it like started at like 11. So by the time we got out, it was like pitch black. It was the middle of the night, and it just made it even creepier. So I really loved that. That was great. And then another one, like a more kind of contemporary one, and it's very similar to your Insidious story, but the movie I chose was Black Swan.
Oh, okay, nice pick.
Because similar to you, I didn't know a huge amount about it. It was one of those ones where it's like, oh, it's about a ballet dancer. And that was all you kind of knew about it. You knew it was a horror, but it was about ballet. And that was, I remember, I looked up when it came out, and I'd have been about 16 at the time. So I've only kind of recently, like when I went to uni, became a big fan of like horror movies and stuff. So when I was 16, I was still like a proper wimp.
Yeah.
It's that way where you're watching it and you're obviously with friends, so you're trying to play it kind of cool, but the panic is just building and building and building. And especially like the last kind of third of Black Swan is so dramatic and so like tense that it really, like everyone in the movie, you could feel like we were talking about this sort of heightened sense of like just fear, because it was scary, and it wasn't like a traditional kind of jump scare. It was like and it was like weirdly, like once the movie finished, it was like weirdly like cathartic, because you were like, all right, thank God that's over almost.
Yeah, almost like you're literally breathing for the first time in hours.
Yeah, definitely. It was one of those ones we came out and we were like, what did you think? And we were like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a very good point actually. It's funny that you say that you hadn't seen a lot of horrors at that point. I remember my sort of entry into horror was really when I was like 14, and like a bunch of friends that I hung out with we used to have like movie nights, and we'd buy like cheap DVDs and HMV and watch a bunch of horrors. But then we started, because we got an appetite for it, we started sneaking in to horrors because they wouldn't let us buy tickets.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
And no, but unfortunately, like I don't think any of them were ever that good. I think like I liked them, like we all enjoyed them and appreciated them, but I don't ever remember having that sort of actual terror experience until Insidious, which I feel like probably made that resonate all the more, because I felt like maybe quite safe seeing horror movies in cinemas, and then that kind of flipped the script. But yeah, Black Swan is a very good pick actually, and a bit out of left field, but it is definitely like it's a movie that goes places.
Yeah, I think as well, obviously the music choice, there's such an emphasis on music in that movie, so seeing it in the cinema where it's even louder and it just like reverberates around the whole room was a lot better as well. I guess
Absolutely.
it is good when you're watching in your house, but it's just not the same.
No, definitely not. And that movie's like, from what I remember of it as well, is shot like really nicely and stuff as well. It's another one that kind of complements. It's also funny that you mentioned seeing kind of older movies in the cinema, because I always see or like used to back when like cinemas were kind of functioning normally, I used to always sort of see like, okay, like upcoming releases or re-screenings of like classic movies, and like I swear every single one that I like wanted to see was always like, it always fell in just like an obscure time bracket that like I could never make.
Yeah, they play it like really randomly, like on like a Thursday morning at like 11 o'clock, and I'm like, if you work a normal kind of job, do you know what I mean? You're never gonna get to see them.
Exactly, yeah, exactly, and it's a shame because like there's so many that I've seen. I'm like, I've seen that movie so many times, but I would love to see that in a cinema.
Yeah.
And yeah, I kind of feel like it's a shame that I've missed out on that for the most part. I think again, the only films that I maybe have seen released was the Phantom Menace. When like just before Disney bought Star Wars, they were going to re-release every movie like sequentially, basically every year, but in 3D. So I got to go see that in 3D with my dad and my brother, and which, to be fair, what was like, because that was my first ever Star Wars film, that was like quite a glorious experience. To kind of relive that. But the thing that I remember most about that, and the thing I enjoyed the most about that, was so every single time Jar Jar, but like, talking about like heightened emotions and feeling emotions, every single time Jar Jar Binks was on that screen, you could feel the hatred in the room, and I loved that so much.
You're like feeding so off it, like
yeah, pretty much. Got so much enjoyment from that. So that definitely, like, that was probably like the most I've enjoyed Phantom Menace since I was a kid. So it was still worthwhile going back to see it. But I just wish I'd been able to do it with more films.
It's so good. That's another one of those things where I just must subconsciously check like cinema listings and stuff. There was one time as well, we used to have like the unlimited cards, me my bestie, and one day we decided we were going to make the most of it, so we had a whole cinema day, and it took like a full day to plan, and we started, first movie was like 10 in the morning and the last one was like 11 at night, and honestly I can't even remember how it was, at least 7 or 8 movies we saw in that one day.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and it was like planned to the second.
Wow. I was gonna say, like, I think I've done, like, again, back when I was like 14, we used to sneak into films. We used to do it quite a lot, where we would just have like cinema days, and like Orange Wednesdays and stuff. We'd milk them, but like I think the most I've ever seen in one day was 3 films. So like
that's rookie numbers.
Apparently they are. Major respect to you for. I think I had unlimited cards at one point and tried to see a movie back to back, and they were like, no, there's a cooldown. You need to wait like 30 minutes after that movie's ended to watch to buy tickets for the next one.
We found a way around that. So we would book every like second or third movie would be booked online, and then you would just go up to the desk and you'd be like, we need these films booked.
That is genius. I wish I had thought of that.
But we had to like figure out what movies we wanted to see, what time we were on at, what their run time was. Yeah. So some movies we would be figuring it out and be like, right, well, there's 40 minutes of adverts, so this one I'll finish at this time, and we can just zip right into that one and we'll get there before the movie starts.
Have you ever done one of
good
those?
fun.
Because they do like with sort of big franchise films, or again they used to when they were doing like midnight showings and stuff. They would do like they would maybe if it was like a third film in a series, they would show like the first two back to back before like the third one. Have you ever done one of those?
We did. We had tickets to go and see the Tim Burton Batman movies, which were back
Oh,
to
really?
back. Yeah, and it was
Nice.
fun, but halfway through watching them, I was like, turns out these aren't my favourite Batman movies.
Yeah, I'm not super keen on them either, to be honest. But like I've been unsurprisingly much bigger fan of Christopher Nolan's.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I
But
remember.
that's the only one of that I've ever done.
I remember like I think I feel like I've done it for a couple, but I remember one I distinctly remember is doing it for the second Captain America movie. Not that I was like I wasn't particularly like, oh, I really need to see like Captain America 2 and I need to see Captain America 1 again before seeing it. I think I was just like the friends I were going to see it with, they just booked it and they were like, yeah, we're just doing this, and I was like, okay, well, I've never done
Yeah,
this
you're
before,
coming
so yeah, I was like it'll be interesting. But yeah, I do remember towards the end of like the second one getting a bit like restless and being like, okay, I've been sitting down for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing.
I do
I think
remember
it
at
was
the
a.
end of the at the end of the
Sorry.
cinema day, I was so ill because all I had done was eat snacks and popcorn and ice cream all day, and it's just not good.
Yeah, that is the other fatal thing, isn't it? When you just that you load up on sugar, which is great at the time, but then
Yeah,
afterwards you are like, I have done some damage here.
yeah, but when you crash like two movies to go and you're sitting in the last movie and you're like, ugh.
Yeah, very fair point. But yeah, it is like it is quite like a lot of fun just having the sort of back to back experience. It was quite weird, like
Yeah,
seeing like two movies because it was like obviously the whole point was like everyone was there to see the two movies. It was quite strange, like taking a break from like a movie, like because they had like a very brief like space in between for people to like buy like snacks and go to the bathroom and stuff like that. And it was quite strange, like kind of leaving a cinema screen, then going right back in and just like sitting back in your seat, and like everyone in the cinema just being the exact same people that were
yeah.
in there before. Um,
That's funny. I think I have really bizarre cinema going habits because I remember another time it was Wolf of Wall Street and me and the same bestie went to see it, and then after it had finished we were like, do you want to go see it again? And we just immediately bought tickets and went back in and watched it like back
wow.
to back.
How did it compare the second time?
Well, the second time it was getting really late and I was so tired, and the movie's obviously a long movie.
Yeah.
So the second viewing definitely wasn't as enjoyable as the first. I'd definitely
Yeah.
recommend taking a small break, at least.
That's very fair. But
Do you
yeah,
have
love
any
the enthusiasm.
experiences? Yeah. Do you have any instances of like bad experiences at the cinema, or? Because I was trying to think, and I don't think I do.
I'm a little bit envious. I've not like don't yeah. I'm sure there are people out there who have worse experiences than me. But I mean I've got a few that kind of range from, well, I mean, like to start off on a kind of mild one. I remember going to see Tenet last year, and it was like the first film that I'd seen after the first lockdown. Is the first film that I'd like was going to a cinema to see. First film, like obviously like in a pandemic world, and you know, huge fan of Christopher Nolan. So I was like, okay, a lot of like excitement for this, and it was quite a. And then this seems to be like a like general thing that I've like seen people talking about and kind of feeling. And the ironic thing is that like it actually made me seeing it in the cinema. I actually wish that I was watching it at home because the
Oh
sound
yeah.
mixing in that movie isn't the best. So there's like, and it's a very like concept heavy movie with like a lot of like sort of like rapid fire exposition. So when you can't really hear the dialogue, you're like lost for most of the movie. And I was like sitting there like watching that film, like I have no idea what's going on plot wise, and like that can be okay for
That's
like
annoying.
a bit of the runtime, but like when you're like coming up and halfway in and you're like, I still don't really know what's going on in this film, and not in a okay, well, I can't wait to see like when the answers come. It's like the movie has already explained things to me that I have just completely
Yeah.
missed, and it
Especially
made me
in
wish.
like a
Sorry.
especially in like a Christopher Nolan movie where it's important that you listen to all of the dialogue.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because they're not
exactly.
they're not very straightforward.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it just literally I was just like if I was at home, I could rewind this and catch that bit again, or I could put subtitles on.
Put subtitles on it.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, it was like, it's such a shame that like, because usually his movies are a great cinematic experience. And Interstellar was probably like, again, I've talked about that one before, but I remember seeing that in IMAX, and that was probably the best like film I've seen in IMAX, just for the fact that there's some beautiful, obviously, shots of like just like the vastness of space, and then you have like the ship as like a sort of a wee like pinpoint moving through it, and that was like getting that on like the biggest screen possible was incredible. But yeah, Tenet was one where like, and it was the movie's fault effectively. I actually wish that I hadn't seen it in cinemas. But to I guess to jump off that and then go to like an actual probably quite negative experience was I went to see The Woman in Black with Daniel Radcliffe. I remember going to see that, and it was like, I've never been in a cinema quite like it. Everyone, and it literally seemed like everyone was just sitting talking through the whole film.
Oh, that's so annoying.
To the point where there was actually like a constant stream for the full 2 hours of people just getting up, fed up, and like leaving because they just like couldn't deal with it anymore. And that like, yeah, it was just really hard to like enjoy that film when everyone was just like, you couldn't ever really get caught up in the suspense of it because people were just like chatting and exactly, and laughing and making jokes and stuff like that. So those are probably like 2 very different ones, but that's probably my most prominent. I think I've been to see other things as well, and I've literally had like people shouting things out during like a movie, which is also like incredibly annoying. And I really, because you're just like that's I guess when you're also very where you're like, I am now trapped in this room for the next 2 hours of these people.
Yes, exactly, with these nut jobs. Exactly. And you don't want to say anything, because then it'll just evolve into an argument, and then you're then part of the problem.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, at the end of the day, you're like, I came here to just like sit back and relax and enjoy something.
I'm just trying to chill.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember, that's funny, I remember when we went to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I've never been in a cinema where more people have got up and left.
Really?
Like, I've never experienced anything. Sometimes you see it where people, but I've never in my life seen it any more than one group of people, and this was like multiple people. At least like 4 or 5 groups of people got up and left. Which was weird, because
really
I was,
like,
I always think as well, if you've paid, I'm like, I've paid for the ticket, so
yeah,
I'm just gonna sit and watch the whole movie, like.
Exactly, and I can't like, I don't know I wonder if that was people who were going in. Just I wonder what they were expecting from the experience, and because don't get me wrong, it's like, it's not my favorite Tarantino movie, but I do still really like it, and I feel like, it's a Tarantino film. Like, ultimately, usually you go in there for the dialogue, and there's loads of that. So
exactly.
I could understand more with maybe like one of his more violent films, people doing that, because then it's like, well, they're obviously like put off by that, but like to be like probably one of the tamer ones is just a bit bizarre. I've
100%,
had,
but that was such a weird experience. Sorry?
It just made me kind of remember when I think it's only happened once. Well, I mean, I can only remember it happening once. But there was an experience I had where like the opposite happened. When I went to see, when I went to see the last Harry Potter film, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, and I'd already seen it. I went to like the midnight screening of it, which was amazing. And I was seeing it again with my girlfriend at the time, because I think she'd been on holiday when the movie was released. So we went to see it together, and it was in 3D. We're sitting in the cinema, and literally halfway through the film, this woman came and just like sat beside us, and she just like pulled out a foil blanket and just like kind of like tucked herself in, and she didn't have any 3D glasses on as well. And I was just like,
what?
Who is she, and why is she here? And she was just there for the rest of the film, and I was like, is she even really is she getting any of this? How did she get in here? I think it was in the Cine Road in the centre of Glasgow, and it was like the 7th floor or something as well. So it wasn't even like it's just the first screen that she's walked into.
Yeah.
I was like, she's come a long way to get to this point.
That is so weird. That's like going
it
back
was
to that
like,
thing where cinemas being in the cinema is a weird experience.
it
'Cause
definitely was a weird.
Yeah, you've just like accepted that into your heart, being like, okay, that's really weird. Anyway.
I know, and I was very glad that I had seen the movie before, because I was like, half of my attention was just focused on like the person sitting beside me for the
Like,
back
what's she
half of the
gonna do
movie.
next?
Yeah, exactly. I just kept wondering. I was like, is she gonna leave? Is she gonna realize that it's in 3D and maybe get 3D glasses? I was like, she just chilled there the whole time.
I wonder if
I think
she must have had like a banging headache by the end of it, watching it in 3D without glasses.
I know. Yeah, it kind of been fun for her.
How weird.
I know.
Similarly, I think you were kind of touching on this, but is there a movie or movies that you wish you had seen in the cinema? Whether that's because of a particular, like, whether it's your favourite movie or there was like any kind of significance to the movie itself or anything like that?
Yeah, so I love this question, and like my go to answer for this, because it is something that I've like thought about a lot, just in general, and yeah, I think for me, like, if I could go back in time, and watch any movie for like, with like the actual audience at the time, and I preferably also go in blind to the thing myself. I would absolutely love to see, or to have seen, the first Alien movie in the cinemas, because I feel like the chestburster scene in particular must have like set the place alight, because to watch that and to actually not know, like, I mean, Alien blew me away anyway when I watched it for the first time, but I had seen Alien versus Predator, unfortunately, so I was aware of like chestbusters and sort of the mythology of it and how they worked, but I feel like to actually have that raw experience of not having a clue where the film was going, and it's such a beautifully shot movie as well. I feel like it would have been incredible to see on the big screen. So
That's funny. That was one of my choices as well.
Was it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's just like, I can't think of, like, if you were to talk about like movie moments that like are made to sort of be seen like that just always like sort of sticks out in my head, because, and again, like, it's the reason Aliens endured, and nothing has ever been able to sort of take its place. Is there's such like a unique, I mean, there's so many like unique elements to that movie, but like the design of the creature, and also just like the concept of how it works and all the stages of it is sort of so gruesome and horrible, and not something that you could ever, that a lot of the time when you're watching films, you can kind of like sort of predict where things are going. You could never in a million years pre-Alien have seen like all the things that were going to happen in that film. But yeah, so that would kind of be like my list. That's my golden pick. I would also, there's other ones that I think would have been really cool. Like, obviously seeing the first Star Wars for the first time.
That's what I thought you were going to say, actually, when you were talking about it there.
I mean, it's, to be fair, very close in like release. So just drop me to the tail end of the 70s and I'll get both out of the way. But yeah, like, I think that would have been another one that just would have been quite magical to see. But there's probably a bunch, like, if we're going back to horror, like The Exorcist. I remember Mom telling me like how terrifying that was. I think you had like people fainting.
Yeah, I remember my friend, she's her dad used to always tell this story that he went to see it and him and his pals were acting all like, oh yeah, that was, and then they like sprinted all the way home.
Oh wow.
Because they were so terrified that they just ran all the way home.
That would have been brilliant to be part of.
Yeah.
And I think like Blair Witch is another one that we've sort of talked about. I think like when that was kind of released, I think there was obviously a lot of like, I as we sort of talked about before with like the sort of advertising campaign they had. I think you definitely could, that would have been really cool. Then there's also like probably like, I guess a sort of slight cop out answer, but I think another one would be, and this would work even if it was like a re-release. I'd love to just see like most of Stanley Kubrick's films in cinema. I'd love to see. No joke.
Like, one of my other choices is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
That was literally top of my list for like, if I was going to see any of his films in a cinema, it would be 2001, because like, and again, to be fair, it would have been amazing to see that like at the time when you had, because even I remember watching that movie about 10 years ago on Blu-ray, and even then I was just like, how did they do this in the 60s? And that must have been like way more mind-blowing in the actual 60s, especially because half the people there were on LSD. So like
maybe that's the secret.
Oh, exactly. That would have been the authentic way to see the film.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are sort of the major picks. I think maybe I've had one more. I would really have liked to see. Obviously, I've seen like a couple Tarantino films in cinemas, but I think I would really have liked to have seen Inglourious Bastards in cinemas. Because there's like the opening scene, and obviously like there's some like this sort of like underground bar scene with I think Michael Fassbender later on, are sort of so wrought with tension that I think would have just been like phenomenal to witness. With the sort of live audience.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
So this is so funny because I was chatting to my pal about this obviously beforehand, and she straight away was like, "What's your pick? Would it be Jaws?" Yes. I would, and it's like that you were talking about, like if you could go back in time to see it, not even like if it came back out in re-release, I would honestly like hit me up if it ever comes out on re-release, because I want none about that. But if you could go back in time, especially because it's like kind of widely regarded to be one of the first like blockbusters, so I can just imagine like, and it was if it's like in the summer and you live like where I grew up in Irvine is technically a beach town, so that would be even more fun because then you go to the beach and you're like on the lookout, sorry. But I think as well, Spielberg, his movies are so like almost like spectacular, if you know what I mean. They're so like movie, like it's like movie 101. So all of his movies, I think, so even like Indiana Jones, E.T., anything like that would have been amazing. But Jaws specifically, again for the tension thing, if you'd never seen it and you'd never maybe heard that theme song before.
I think that's such a good point. Is like like actually thinking about the idea of going into Jaws and not, because I saw Jaws I think when I was like 11 years old, but I knew, I still knew so much. You know the music. Like I don't know what point I first heard the Jaws theme, but it's just like everyone knows it. And to actually go into the movie, and I guess like you say as well, like because like even then like people didn't really know who Steven Spielberg was. That was like
because he was only like 24 or something ridiculous when he made Jaws. Yeah, he was young.
Wow. That must have been like really must have been like again, like you say, like this our first blockbuster, and just like it's such an iconic film, and it is for a reason. And I feel like you could have gone into that and like been utterly blown away. Probably like it definitely like changed the way a lot of people kind of saw movies, I think. And that would have been another good one to like actually partake in.
Yeah, I think as well because it's like when you're watching it in your house, it's pretty scary. So seeing it in the cinema would be. I've seen pictures actually where they would do it like it's on like this big screen and everyone's like, it's almost like a giant big pool, and people are watching it like in the water while they're watching it. That would be so good.
That's one of the gimmicks that I can actually get on board with, because I can totally see how that would add to the experience.
Yeah, especially because Jaws is quite. I don't know if you could describe it as like a fun movie, but you don't. It is really tense and it's scary, like I was saying, but you don't. Because it's a shark, you're not sitting in your living room looking over your shoulder. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you were in the water, you'd be like, "What was that?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you would be very, very uncomfortable, increasingly so, like as the sort of film progressed. So I think that would be another good way of getting sort of immersed in the film. Having your feet exposed.
Exactly. That's funny. Is there any movies that you like, events or anything like that you always, so my example would be like, I think most people, if they went to see the Harry Potter movies, had like a little Harry Potter crew that they would, and that was the same people that they went to see all of the movies with. Do you have that with any other movies? Is there like any movie that you, or genre, or anything like that you would specifically want to go and see, like Marvel movies or anything like that?
It's a good question. I guess I think probably like realistically like the sort of top of the list for me, like movies that I utterly love to go see in the cinema, and probably get the most out of in the cinemas are like big blockbusters like Marvel movies and like the Harry Potter films and again Star Wars, because I do think like they're designed, they're made to sort of be watched on a big screen with like really good like sort of sound systems and like you are sort of meant to be blown away. And like I remember like the chills that I got like watching Avengers Endgame and even like The Dark Knight Rises and stuff like that, when like you are getting these like big payoffs in these movies. And yeah, it's absolutely like a phenomenal experience. And you obviously get like crowds that like go wild and start cheering and stuff like that, which if like it's the right film and the sort of right atmosphere, then it's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, I think like the lighter a movie is, a lot of the time the better it kind of works. Like comedies as well, like I don't really like to sit and watch comedy. I never really sit and just like watch comedies because I like don't really laugh that much when I'm by myself. But if I'm in the cinema and I'm watching a comedy, then it adds so much to the experience. And even I notice that a lot with like with movies that aren't necessarily comedies, maybe more action movies that just have comedy sort of sprinkled in them. I'd like Pirates of the Caribbean, obviously, like were a big like favorite when I was younger. But like on that sort of track, I remember going to see the Lone Ranger, which was I think the same guy that. It was the same producers who did Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't know I think it was the same director as well, Gore Verbinski, who did the first three, who did the Lone Ranger. And weirdly enough, I went to go see a screening of it at like 7 a.m. Because I think I had plans to meet people at like midday, and I woke up like obscenely early that day, like just out of the blue, and I was like, do you know what, I've got like 6 hours to kill. What can I do? The Lone Ranger's like 3 hours long, so I was like, by the time that I get into town and like the movie starts, then that will like pretty much fill up all the day that I need filled up. And I remember I sat in the front row, which like most my friends all sort of hate me for, because I absolutely love sitting in the front row, because no one else does. But I'd like, for me, it's like unlimited leg room. If you need to get up and pee, you don't have to awkwardly shuffle past anyone. You get like the biggest possible screen.
And a crick in your neck because you have to watch it like this.
Not so much for me. Just lean back a little bit. And it's fantastic. I know I'm the only one, and like I literally have friends that will not let me book cinema tickets because they know I'll just pop us in the front row.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I sat and I was going to see the Lone Ranger by myself, and which is a sort of almost like a different type of cinema experience.
I've actually never done that yet, and I really want to. But then you tell people, "Oh, I went to go to cinema yourself," and they look at you and they're like, "That's a shame."
That's a bit weird. You're like, is it like people watch movies by themselves all the time?
Yeah, exactly. I'm just gonna bite the bullet and do it, and everyone can just call me a sad actor or whatever.
You absolutely should. Like I've done it a couple of times with different films. I remember doing it with like Wreck-It Ralph, and I definitely had like a more. It's weird. You almost have like a more intimate connection with the movie because you're there yourself. So I do very much recommend it. But I think I've only done it a handful of times. Like I would. Probably you choose to go see a movie first and foremost with friends because you then get the experience of talking about it after.
Yeah.
But I do think there's definitely a value in going to see something by itself. But anyway, I'll sort of pull off that tangent. No, not at all. That was my fault. When I went to the Lone Ranger, I was both by myself and in the front row, and it wasn't that big a screen. There was literally like 5 other like just different people sort of in there with me, and I remember there was just like, because there's a lot of like sort of rapid fire humor in it, and I remember for like most of the film I would be laughing out loud, and then very quickly realise I was the only one doing that.
Oh no!
And it was almost like every single time I would laugh, I would become like. I would be reminded of the fact that, oh yeah, I'm just here by myself in the front row, so I'd probably just look a bit mental.
That's hilarious. Imagine being further up, you're like, that boy is insane.
Yeah, I definitely looked it. But yeah, I had a good time with it. I probably had a better time with the Lone Ranger than most people who saw the Lone Ranger.
That's fair enough. That's funny that you sit in the front row. I used to always want to be the very back row, but now that I'm older and wiser, right bang smack in the middle is where I like to be.
I always find it really.
Sorry?
I was gonna say I find it really difficult. I've tried to go to the back a few times, and I've always found it like near impossible to like actually get seats in the back. Or if you like, or I think there's been times where there's seats available in the back. I go to the back row, and then there's like a row of like 6 teenagers that are like chatting loudly, and I'm like, no, I'm getting as far away from them as possible.
Yeah, 100%. That's funny. There's always those weird people that like to sit right on the very edge. I'm like, why would you? So the screen's right in the middle, and you're like, well, I'll sit over here.
Yeah, I really those are the seats that I hate is when you're like on the sort of corner. That's when like weirdly enough I'm hanging this, but when it comes to like
I have to turn my whole body. No.
Yeah, not having that at all. So that's like and I agree. You're right. You do get people that like purposefully seek out those seats, and it's like, what are you like? How do you sit in like normal situations? Like, do you always sit in like the corners of tables and stuff like this?
Or like your
really bizarre
couch in your living room's facing like the window as opposed to the TV.
Yeah, exactly. Purposefully angled away from it, so that you can like replicate that. Like, it's such a weird like way to you have like so many good places to sit, and you are choosing like literally the extreme end.
Yeah.
But then again, that is literally how people feel about me sitting at the front. So
that's true. I feel really weird about that actually, Sam. Do you know what's funny as well? I remember being young, and I would never do it now. But I remember being young, and every time I went to the cinema, the minute the trailer started, I would take my shoes off.
I went through a phase of doing that as well, and it was glorious while I did it, because it was just like you're so much more comfortable.
Yeah.
But then I do remember getting to a certain age, a certain point, and I was like, I should probably stop doing that.
Yeah, I should probably just keep my shoes on. Yeah.
It's so funny. I'm starting to get looks.
Yeah, it was so freeing at the time, but
I know.
All good things.
Exactly.
Speaking of, last thing I wanted to talk about was basically the most recent movie that that we've seen at the cinema, which, as far as I'm aware, is the same movie, which is Godzilla versus Kong.
Yes.
Yeah, and this was actually funny because we'd spoken about it before, and it was you that had brought it up about how it's such like a cinema type experience movie where it's just very action packed and it's fun, and it was such a good pick for the first time in forever going to see this to see a movie in the cinema. So what did you think of it? Did you enjoy it?
I'd genuinely, when you were talking about favorite like cinema experiences, that actually has to be up there, and it's such a unique one, because like, and it's funny because like obviously we were locked down for the first part of last year, and then again cinemas like reopened, and like I said, I went to go see Tenet, and you would absolutely think that would have been the definitive, oh my god, I've missed cinemas and it's so good to go to be back and to be seeing a Christopher Nolan movie. I totally would have thought that would have been like the transcendent experience, but I ended up having like too many frustrations with it, and I guess with like the cinemas reopening this time, it's maybe felt like less of a given thing. Like there's been like stories of like cinemas closing down, like theatre chains and stuff like that, and everyone's very aware of like the state of like the state of movie, the sort of future of movies is quite like delicate right now, at least like in cinemas as opposed to like on TVs. So I think like I definitely felt like there was a bit more at stake this time, and that like cinemas reopening at all was much more of like an exciting thing, and something to really be like cherished. But yeah, like I went to see it last Wednesday, and it's so daft. It was like being a kid again, because like there's a lot of like, the movie tries its hand at having a plot and has like, various things going on with characters, and there's loads of like sort of exposition and setup, and I have never sat through like a movie where I have cared so little what people are saying, and all my sort of critical thinking of the film was pretty much just left at the door. There was the odd moment where I was like, that's a bit weird, but like it was so sparse, and for the most part I was literally just sitting there like, I am so happy to be in a cinema, and I am so happy to be watching this movie this way. And I literally feel like if I had watched that movie at home, I wouldn't have cared for it at all. But I had like such a fun
Oh
time
yeah.
with it.
That's so true. It's funny
Yeah.
as well because like I can't even remember the characters' names. I can't remember
No, neither can
any of their
I.
names. But it doesn't like I'm like I remember that Godzilla was there and Kong was there and that's all. It was nice as
Exactly.
well
Yeah.
because
Exactly.
sometimes like we it was funny because I've seen the Matthew Broderick Godzilla, but I wanted to watch the kind of newer ones. So we watched maybe like 40 minutes of the first Godzilla one with like Bryan Cranston was in it. And it was pretty boring. Like Godzilla barely made an appearance. And I was really like we didn't even watch the end of it, and I was a bit nervous that it was going to be the same, but it was good in that it was a lot of Godzilla and Kong, which is like if like that's what I was going to see. I wasn't going to see any kind of character development or anything like that. I just wanted to see them fighting, and you did, which was.
Yeah.
I
I
thought the
absolutely agree,
fights
and I
as well
think
were pretty fun. Like Kong like straight up just punches Godzilla in the face at one point,
yeah, I was
which is
laughing at like
very fun
at
to
various
watch.
yeah, exactly. I was just laughing at various points in the movie because of stuff like that, because I was like, this film is so dumb, but it's so
Yeah,
brilliant because of it. And like when they go to like the
I
whole
think
like
it
Hollow Earth
definitely it
thing and
didn't. Yeah, it didn't take itself too seriously as well, which was good.
no.
It was very much like, look, he's like when he was in Hollow Earth, the Kong's just swinging around this kind of creature thing. I can't
Exactly.
even remember what it was.
Yeah, I know it was yeah, it's all very weird and sort of high concept. But I appreciated the fact that like, because again, I didn't know about any of that stuff was going to be in the film, and I kind of like, at first I was like, this is a bit weird, a weird direction for it to take. But then I was also like, the movie's called Godzilla versus Kong, so if ever there's a place for stuff like this, it's
Yeah,
absolutely this film. And yeah, like you say,
that's
like they
so
do a
funny.
really good job of like they give you plenty of Godzilla and Kong action, and they space it out quite nicely so that it did always feel never you were never left sitting there thinking like, oh, like where's Godzilla, where's Kong. Like they had like a
Yeah.
lot of like screen time, and they sort of did a lot of like cool things, both like yeah, like visually and stuff like that. Some really cool like visuals in that movie actually. It was like,
Yeah.
and I think with those sort of films, it can be really easy to just get annoyed anytime there's like a human on screen, and like when they're trying to kind of like make like yeah like justify the film's existence with the human characters. And that like again, I think because it didn't take itself so seriously, I think like I was like pretty comfortable with like the human characters on screen most of the time. And they, I remember that sort of final battle, there's like they're in like a wee sort of spaceship thing, and there's a shot where they fly up and they sort of go over King
Just
Kong's head, and
overthink.
then God,
Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, this is brilliant. Like
Yeah. Do you
I've
know when I
missed
was
this
when
so
we were
much.
yeah, definitely when we were watching it, I was honestly like, oh my god, I feel like I'm already on the ride that they haven't built yet. I'm like, that needs to
Exactly,
become a
that's
ride.
yep, absolutely. That's exactly what it's like, isn't it? And yeah, it's just genuinely. There's no other way to describe it than it was just like pure joy.
Yeah.
And it's like it's yeah, and I think as well like even just like the sort of big silly blockbuster has been a sort of like hallmark of cinema for a very long time now, and even that is like I'm glad that like Godzilla versus Kong has released, and it's done weirdly enough it's made more money I think than the second Godzilla movie, which was released out of a pandemic. Um, and but like and I think it's yeah I think it's I'm really happy that it's actually making money, and because I think it will sort of preserve it's doing more than anything else right now to sort of preserve cinema, which I never thought I'd be saying.
Yeah.
But I think like yeah like I the worry is going forward, if if studios start focusing more on streaming services, then I think the worry is very much that, well, why would they spend like hundreds of millions on these blockbusters when they're not actually going to get the same nearly, I'd imagine you're not going to get the same sort of revenue, because you're not generating money from each release, are you? You're just sort of maintaining subscribers.
Yeah.
So I think like I
Yeah,
feel
and if
like
you're subscribing,
if
you've already like they've already got your money. Do you know what I mean? Unless
exactly.
remember when Disney Plus was charging people to see Mulan,
I know.
Yeah, that doesn't. That was ridiculous because it was more expensive than a cinema ticket.
Yeah, I know. That completely baffles me because why would you pay more to have a worse experience? Because
Yeah.
you're going to a cinema and the whole point is like they have like comfy chairs and they have a huge screen and a great sound system and weird to pay more but to get less of an experience.
Yeah, to like sit in your house and have the glare from the windows on the screen, and I really hope it doesn't, like, I don't think Disney did very well with that, but I really hope it doesn't go down that kind of path, where you need to like pay to watch movies in your house, and that way
I think that's a really dystopian like scenario where like which it is, as you sort of pointed out, they have tried already and they probably will keep trying or try again at least. Where you're already paying for a subscription service, but then you're also paying to like temporarily watch something on top of it, or even if you're paying to permanently watch on top of it, it's still pretty bonkers, the idea of like paying like 15 quid on top of like a monthly service that you're already like paying.
I think it's different like with Prime, for example. Like sometimes I don't mind paying the like $2.50 or whatever it is to rent a movie. That doesn't really bother me because it's $2.50 and then you got it for like 2 days or whatever. But normally that's movies that have already been released and you just can't find them on Netflix or whatever. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I think you're right. Like it's I mean that is effectively the same as just going to like, if back when you go to like Blockbuster or whatever. Again, granted you are technically paying for Prime, but I think you might actually be able to. I don't know if you actually do. You need Prime to rent those movies? I know that there are definitely. I think
I'm not
YouTube
sure,
has like
actually.
you can rent.
Yeah, YouTube.
I think you can rent movies.
Like,
Yeah. So I think there are definitely services where like you can just pay to rent something and you don't have to have like a service around it. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think you potentially don't need Amazon Prime to rent those movies. Could be wrong. Which again is going back to like the whole thing of like, with Disney, it just seems mental, the idea of paying to watch something on top of already paying for the service. At that point, I'd rather like just buy like a Blu-ray of the film and then you own it and you get special features. And that would feel at least a bit more worthwhile, but then you're not really going to do that for like every single film that gets released, are you? Because you just don't really know what you're in for with them. So it seems like a sort of counterintuitive way to sort of move forward. And again, I feel like it's just not, it's not a patch on the cinema.
No, I don't think there's anything like it. Like even if you have a great TV and an amazing surround sound system, it's just not going to ever be the same as watching a movie in the cinema. Where they're like, movies are made to be seen in the cinema. Do you know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
That's what they're made for. That's what's in mind when they're coming up with their shots and cinematography and things like that. So obviously you can't see every movie in the cinema, but I think it's hopefully something that's not going to go away for a while.
Exactly. And I've seen a lot of like sort of interviews with like directors and writers and stuff talking about the fact that just with movies that have come out recently, obviously, talking about the fact that a lot of them are being released on, like, some of them have had like sort of limited like theatrical releases, but most of them have just like been dropped on streaming services. And they have said that like it's funny because it is like a bit of it's a weird one where they've said like on one hand, we are really gutted because like some of them managed to get like test screenings in before like the pandemic and stuff, and they were like, it's like it adds so much to the film when you're like in a room watching it with people. But then others have said they just appreciate the fact that like, okay, at least people are getting to see their movie. And it's not like, okay, well, this thing's just being shelved for the next 5 years. Like getting the Bond movie that's still yet to appear. Yeah, exactly. It just infinitely it just further and further away. Although apparently, I was told today, I've not actually like researched this at all. I was told today apparently Amazon have bought James Bond.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know if like that means they're going to release the new one. I would imagine the new one's still going to get a cinematic release. I think when I was at the cinema, there was definitely a poster for it. Because I saw it and I just kept laughing. Yeah. Yeah, I did the same experience where like I saw it as well, and Yeah, it's funny that like it was supposed to come out last April, and I think the
That's
poster they
hilarious.
had up in the cinema now just said coming soon at the bottom as opposed to like a release date. I was like, that's probably the smarter way to play
Yeah, that's probably for the best. That's funny.
it now.
But no, yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up. To basically, in conclusion, nothing will beat the cinema.
Agreed. Yeah, go out
Yeah,
and see as much as you can, as often as you can to
yeah.
keep those places afloat.
Especially because like
'Cause-
some cinemas are doing super cheap tickets just now.
yeah, absolutely. I think you were saying you got VIP tickets for the same price as your regular ones.
Yeah, and it was like the
Um,
cheap. It was like £12 for like two VIP tickets, which is normally the cost
yeah,
of
that's
like
that.
one ticket. So
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like I remember when I went to see the last thing that I saw, like pre this lockdown, when cinemas were briefly open, was Bill and Ted 3. And it was literally like I think it was the last day or the second last day that Cineworld was open. And I think I think I had unlimited cards. I don't think I paid for the ticket, but I think my friend was with me, and he paid something like £3 or £4 for the ticket. And on top of that, when we were there, they were like, "Oh yeah, you can also just have popcorn for free." And probably because they were like,
yes,
"Well, we need to get rid of it."
yeah,
But they were obviously pegging it as if it was like, "Oh yes, with this like Bill and Ted experience, you get a free box of popcorn." But yeah, it was not turning my nose up at that.
I know that sounds amazing.
Yeah, so I think there probably are like different cinemas will probably be doing different things, but I think they probably are doing cheaper tickets, and I think they probably are. I've got a friend that I remember saying a while back that they think that yeah, cinemas are really going to have to push to try and like justify people going in and spending as much as they do. I think like Quentin Tarantino actually talked about the fact that cinemas, like the whole point of cinemas to begin with, was they were supposed to be dirt cheap. It was supposed to be like poor people's entertainment, effectively.
Yeah,
And so it is like they have kind of shot themselves in the foot a lot by like jacking up their prices so high that it's now become like an actual like it's you couldn't go and see every film because it would
yeah.
break the bank.
Because even like if the tickets are like £5.99 just now, like in my head I'm like, right, well you can go at least a couple of times a week. Do you know what I mean? Whereas before it was like a whole thing, because the tickets were like £12, £13 a go.
Exactly, and then you'd have like I remember Cineworld had a thing where they had like a super screen on one of their floors, and it was just like a slightly bigger screen that was like curved, but you had to pay an extra £3 I think if you were like seeing it in that one. But what they would do was like with like big movies was they would put as many screenings as possible in like that screen so that you had to like if you wanted to go because it wouldn't tell you when you were looking at like cinema times what it was going to be,
Yeah.
and the amount of times I rocked up and it's like oh yeah, and I think I had an unlimited card and they were still like you need to pay like an extra £3 on top of that to see this movie, which I'm just like
Yeah.
I guess goes back to the Disney Plus thing where I'm like I'm already paying like a subscription service.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy.
Mm.
But I feel like we could just carry on tangents for all of time if we carry on. So I think that's a good place
Uh,
to stop it. But yeah, no, that was good. That was interesting. I always think it's funny to hear other people's like habits and stuff when you talk about going to the cinema, because it's one of those weird things where everyone seems to be different. Everyone's got their little routine thing as well, which is funny because you
yeah,
don't really get that with anything else.
yeah, I think you're totally right with that actually, and even just you don't even really get that with watching films in general. It's not like you like have like a routine for just like sitting down to watch a film. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
because I
guess you
don't
kind of do with the
routinely
cinema.
like get like sometimes I do if I'm feeling a bit sassy, but I don't generally get like a big bowl of popcorn if I'm watching a movie. But I would never go to the cinema and not get popcorn.
Yeah, and I like I love again I love having popcorn with a movie as well, and I'm the same like where I like will rarely have popcorn at home, even though it's cheaper and probably easier to kind of get, and you can stock up on popcorn. Yeah, like
Yeah,
it's just I don't really think to do it at home, and even like because the movie we had. Like I said, I had a movie night with my flatmates last night, and I got popcorn for that just because I was like, well,
cute.
I want to try and make it as like authentic an experience as possible. Even then, like I didn't really eat that much of it, and I didn't really feel that inclined to. And I was like, it's funny how like just being in the cinema just makes you want popcorn.
Yeah, that's funny because I wanted to find out why you eat cinema and the popcorn, and it's so anticlimactical. Basically, because it's dirt cheap. That's why you eat popcorn in the cinema, because they can make such a massive profit on it.
That is brilliant. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I remember I worked in the cinema
yeah.
briefly, and they were pretty much like, if someone drops their popcorn, just give them a new one. Because it's literally pennies for their thing of popcorn that they've paid like £6 for.
That is so funny. Absolutely the most inflated product around, but at the same
Yep.
time, it's class.
Yeah, there's just something about it. Do you get sweet or salted?
I genuinely do like both. I probably go for salted more, but I think that is also because like most people I'm with tend to prefer salted. So I think that's literally why. But like if I actually had to think right now, if you were like, okay, you were going to go to the cinema. If I was going to go to the cinema by myself right now and get popcorn, I would actually go for sweet. Like sweet would be, I feel like sweet would actually be like the one that I would at least right this second like more. But I do
Yeah.
like both of them. I'm guessing you're a sweet gal.
Yeah. No joke, we were in the cinema the other day and the guy was like, sweet or salt? And I was like, sweet.
See, I'm glad that you're not one of the psychopaths that like it mixed.
Ooh, he did offer it mixed and I was like, no thanks.
Oh, I've been with people and they've got mixed popcorn before and it's horrific. Like I've never, and I like sweet and salted, but just when you don't know what you're gonna get and you like, there's nothing worse than like you're expecting like a nice sweet kernel and you just put like salty
It's just
popcorn
so
in your mouth.
salty.
Yeah, it's just like it just became like a stress. I was like, this is now like I'm now anxious about eating popcorn
I'm
because I don't know
surprised
what
they
I'm gonna
don't
get.
I'm surprised they don't just sell salted popcorn so that you buy juice. That seems like they're missing a trick there.
Yeah, that's a very good point actually. That's kind of where I thought you were going at first with like the whole, oh, why do they sell popcorn? I was like thinking to why bars give out peanuts, and obviously
Yeah.
the idea is to make people get thirstier and drink. But yeah, no, just because it's cheap. I love it.
Yep. I remember, no joke, when I worked in the cinema, you know those bags you see, and like I can't even show you the scale, but they're like this big. They
Oh
cost
wow.
like 20p for the cinema to buy. Like it's
Absolutely brilliant.
ridiculous that they're. I dread to think what percentage of profit they make on that, but
I know. That's there you go. That's the future then. Let's open up a cinema.
let's do it just to make all our money on popcorn.
Exactly, and we can show we can have as many screens of Jaws as you like.
Yes. No joke, and I was chatting to my boyfriend about it and about Jaws, and he was like, "Have you never seen Jaws in the cinema?" And I was like, "No," and he was like, "Are you sure? It's like your favourite movie," and I was like, "No, that's what I'm telling you. I haven't seen it in the cinema yet."
Steven Spielberg's holding on to all the reels.
I know. I'll need to figure out when it's like it's got a big anniversary or something coming up, and like check it constantly.
That's a very good point. It'd be a gutter if you missed the tickets.
That'd be so sad. But yeah. Anyway, this is the fourth time I've tried to stop it, so we'll stop it this time.
Apologies.
But yeah, no, thank you very much. That's all right. Obviously next episode will be your episode, which will be episode number 9, which is exciting.
I know.
So yeah, that should be good. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
So yeah, I think all that's left to say is go to the cinema. I'll just leave it at that.
No. Right
No.
now.
Yeah, you've still there's probably
listen to
you've
this
still got time.
podcast on the way. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But no, yeah, thank you very much, Sam. That was very good as always.
Thank you. Love the topic.
And we shall see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
See ya.
Farewell.